Welcome back. This is Donald Potter, and you've just finished stage 2, and stage 2 was Earth orbit. And at this point, you're a free reader. You can virtually pick up any book that you really want to read and read it real well, but there's still more advanced material to make you an even better reader, and in particular, this will help you with your spelling. And there are 2 steps. This stage here, stage 3, is the advanced stage, and I call that moon landing because this is a great accomplishment in your progress learning to read. And this is step 5. There's 6 steps in the program, so this is step 5. Which is spatial endings. Step 6 will be irregular spellings. So we're going to be looking at the endings that we add on to words. So here in exercise 51, we're going to be introducing ed. You'll write ed at the end of a word to show that it's something that happened in the past. That's called past tense. And it has 3 different sounds. And if you'll look over to the left here, we have ed, that's one sound. We have the d, that's a second. And then we have the t, that's the third. And if you look at the top here again, ed can have the, when you add it to a word that ends in a d or a t, a d or a t, it will make a separate syllable and it will be added. And you can actually test that with your hand under your chin, and you say added. That your chin touches your hand twice. Added. Or if we do rested. So you'll notice that there's a D or a T. These are called alveolars, but whatever, if your tongue's touching the roof of your mouth. And if you remember, the T is a quiet cousin or a voiceless consonant, and the D is a noisy cousin, we call them, or a voice consonant on the phonovisual chart. Now, sometimes it has the D sound, D. And if the letter in front of the ED here is voiced, and if you remember the voiced or the noisy cousins on the phonovisual chart, then the ED here is just going to make the D sound. Now watch, that's one syllable. Filled. Filled, it's one syllable. If the letter in front of the ED, you can see the ED there, is a quiet cousin, that is a voiceless consonant on the phonovisual chart, then the ED is just going to make the t sound. T, t. And then here we're going to notice the doubling rule. We often have, in order to keep the vowel in front of this ED ending here, in order to keep it short, we have to double the consonant. So here we have 2 T's. And as we look at these words, we're going to note that. It's very important to realize why you have 2 letters there instead of 1. So let's do the first row here, ed, and again this is a separate syllable, and that will be the short sound ed. The first one is added, and I'll divide the syllable there so you can see it. And the A is short because that syllable ends in a consonant. Next we have counted, counted, and again, an OU is owl, one of our double letters. Then we have matted. Notice the 2 T's, so it's 2 syllables, matted. Next we have needed. Needed, he needed some money. Needed, it's probably divided right there, but anyway. Pointed, he pointed his finger. Rested, they worked hard, so they needed to rest. They rested. Seated, they remained seated during the lesson. Shouted, they shouted loud. And then potted, like they potted the plant. They put the plant in a pot. Okay, now we're going to have the D that says D, D, D. And notice in all of these, I won't mention this every time, but the consonant in front of the ED is one of the noisy cousins, or linguists call those voiceless consonants, or sometimes they call them unvoiced consonants. So let's take a look at them. So these are all going to be one syllable, not two, one syllable. So we have aimed. He aimed his gun at the target. Boiled. They boiled the water, heating it up on the stove. Bragged. Mr. Potter bragged about his reading students. And notice the two G's. You have to add that G to keep that A short. Bragged. Next we have buzzed. Again, notice the two consonants. Called. He called me on the phone. Canned. Two consonants to keep that short. When you say canned, you only hear one consonant. So if you're writing from the sound, you will misspell this word. You have to remember with your eyes how to spell this word. And it helps if you know the rule that you're doubling that to keep that vowel short. If I took that out, that N, that word then would be caned, and it would be a long vowel, caned. Next we have charmed. She charmed the audience. Crawled. The baby crawled out of his bed. Filled. They filled the glass to the top. Followed. Followed is two syllables, but only because you have an extra syllable there. But this ending doesn't add a syllable. Followed. Notice that's a long O-W, not ow, but O. And then we have growled. The dog growled at the robber. And you'll notice here the O-W is the long O sound, but here the O-W is the ow sound, so be careful. Nagged. He nagged, nagged, nagged. Oh, get your room cleaned up. Nag, nag, nag. Is when you tell somebody to do something over and over and over, and it really bugs you. Anyway, double the G to get the A short. Pinned. They pinned the tail on the donkey. And again, if you took out one of those consonants, it would be pine, because it would be at the end of a syllable. Next we have planned. They planned to have a really fun party. Played. They played cards all night. Rigged. They rigged up the ship. Put rigging on the ship. Rigged. And notice the two G's there to keep that short. Robbed. So again, to keep it short, if you took that B out, you would have robed. Next, the bottom one here we have rolled. Rolled over. Sailed. The ship sailed across the ocean. Slammed. He slammed the door. And again, the M is doubled to keep the A short. Sneezed. Achoo. Squeezed. He squeezed the lemon. Squeeze, or squeezed the ball. Trailed. They trailed the robber. And wheeled. They wheeled the wagon down the street. Okay, now we're going to the voiceless t, t at the end of a word. And remember, the consonant in front of the ED in all of these words is one of the quiet cousins on the phonovisual chart, or a voiceless or unvoiced consonant. This first one, notice we didn't double the K. So the syllable ends right there. That word is baked. He baked a cake. Next we have balked. And that A-L makes that A have the aw sound as in ball. Balked. When somebody balks is when they don't want to do something. Blessed. They blessed the food. They said a prayer over the food. So now you have a short E. Blessed. Boxed. They boxed up the Christmas present. Now this is interesting because the X is one letter, but the O is short because the X actually stands for a KS. X is what we call a superfluous letter. Don't really need it. So we write KS with the X sound. So there's actually two consonant sounds there. So that's still going to keep that short even though it's one letter. Next we have cracked. And perhaps you remember that whenever you have a CK, the vowel will most likely, as far as I know, always be short. Cracked. And again, you actually have two consonants here. Next is crashed. Crashed. And that the consonant digraph there will make that vowel short. Crashed. They crashed into the wall. Next we have dropped. Notice the is short because of the double P. They dropped the pencil, or he dropped the pencil. Fished. They fished. They fished in the lake, and that's short A in front of that SH. Next we have fixed, and I don't have to explain that because you already know that the X there is a KS, and as a double consonant sound, even though it's a single letter, it keeps the I short. Let's move on quickly here. They have a lot of words. Next we have fussed. The baby fussed. Notice the doubles. Hatched. Here you have TCH. Be careful. Hatched. And that keeps that short. Helped. They helped clean up the room. And again, although the consonants are not the same in this word, there's two consonants, and so that's going to keep that short. Hissed. The snake hissed. Hitched. They hitched up the horse. Another short vowel. Huffed. Notice the two F's here. He huffed and puffed. Huffed. Hushed. The baby hushed. Next we have jerked. And the ER there says the sound. Jerked. Jumped. He jumped high. And even though the consonants are not the same, you have two of them. You have one consonant, two consonants, jumped, and that's going to keep that short. All right, pressing on. Let's move a little more quickly. Here we have kissed. He kissed his mother. Leaped. And here the EA has the long sound. Leaped. He jumped. He leaped. Marched. They marched in the parade. Matched. They were able to match two things, match colors so the clothes look right. Mixed, and again that X keeps the I short, as you know. Parked, they parked the car. Patched, they patched up the hole in the tire. Pinched, pinched. It's interesting, it looks like two-syllable word, pinched. But it's actually one, pinched. And that I right there is short with those consonants. Then we have preached. He preached a good lesson. Puffed. The train engine huffed and puffed. Scratched. The kitty scratched me. Scuffed. Notice the two F's there keeps that short. Scuff. When you're walking and you have your shoes and you hit something, sometimes it'll scuff, put a mark on your shoe. Skipped. He skipped school. Smoked. Smoked. And that O is short. Notice there's only one consonant there. Smoked. Actually, that is interesting. Here we have a silent E. That's what makes that O long. Smoke, and then you add the D at the end, or the ED, the D at the end of that, and you got smoked. They smoked the ham, cooked it. Snapped. He snapped his fingers. Notice the double P keeps the A short. Sniffed. He sniffed. His nose was running, so he sniffed. Or he was smelling the beautiful rose, and he sniffed the rose. So you got sniffed. Next we have splashed, and that A right there is long. Splashed in the water. Stack. Stack your books. Stitched. They stitched up a tear in the shirt with thread and a needle. Stopped. They stopped the robber. Again, notice the two P's. S-T-O-P-P-E-D. Stopped. You only hear one P. You have to write two P's. This is a very important lesson for spelling. Stuffed. He ate so much he was stuffed. He was full. Trapped. They trapped the bear. Trapped. Tripped. He tripped over a shoe lying on the floor. Tripped. Again, notice the double P. Whipped. They whipped up some whipped cream. Whipped. When you beat something up, you whip it. Now, watch the next one. Wiped. And why is that I long? Because it's at the end of the syllable. Wiped. For those of you that are studying at more advanced phonics, that's called an open syllable. The others we've read were almost all closed syllables. This is an open syllable. And then the last one is wished. He wished everybody would learn to read with phonics. And that's the end of this lesson, and it's a long lesson. Best of luck with it, and I'm sure it's going to really help your reading and spelling.